The wind cut through the research station like a frozen blade, its metallic surfaces gleaming under the dim light of Kepler 452b's distant sun. Dr. Hyun Park stood motionless, his eyes fixed on the holographic display tracking the planet's harsh, atmospheric conditions. The station hummed with the quiet tension of isolation, a small human outpost surrounded by endless white landscapes and unforgiving cold. A sudden burst of static interrupted the silence. The communication systems flickered, revealing an unexpected signal approaching from the upper atmosphere. Hyun's hand moved instinctively to the communication panel, his fingers tracing the emergency protocol switches. Something was falling. Fast. The trajectory showed an object moving at catastrophic speed, leaving a trail of superheated particles and fragmented energy signatures. It wasn't a meteor. It wasn't a standard spacecraft. This was something wounded, something desperate. Jun Lee, the station's security specialist, burst into the observation room. His face was a mix of professional calm and barely contained curiosity. "Sir, we're detecting an unidentified craft. Massive structural damage, multiple system failures." Hyun nodded, his years of scientific training keeping his emotions in check. "Prepare emergency response protocols. Full protective gear. We don't know what's coming." The object broke through the cloud layers, revealing a ship that looked more like a fragment of twisted metal than a functional vessel. Its outer hull was scorched, with multiple breach points visible even from their distant observation point. Something had been hunting this ship, something powerful enough to reduce a sophisticated spacecraft to this broken state. Alarms blared across the research station. The craft was going to crash less than 3 kilometers from their primary facility. Its descent was uncontrolled, a violent plummet that suggested the pilot, if any survived, had lost all navigational capabilities. "Thermal imaging," Hyun commanded. June activated the station's advanced scanning systems. A heat signature emerged from the damaged craft, faint but definitely alive. The crash was spectacular and terrifying. The ship hit the frozen ground like a meteor, sending massive plumes of ice and rock into the air. The impact created a crater, nearly 200 meters wide, the surrounding landscape momentarily illuminated by the explosion's fierce light. Silence returned quickly. The wind continued its relentless march across the desolate planet. "Survival chances?" Hyun asked, his voice steady. June's enhanced scanning equipment worked rapidly. "Minimal. But there's definitely a life form. Alien. Definitely not human." They suited up quickly. The station's emergency response protocols were designed for scientific exploration, not rescue missions. But something about this crash felt different. Felt urgent. Their rover moved across the frozen landscape, its advanced suspension system handling the rough terrain with mechanical precision. The crash site steamed and smoked, a violent wound in the planet's pristine white surface. As they approached, the extent of the damage became clear. The spacecraft was less a ship and more a collection of broken fragments. How anything could have survived such a violent landing seemed impossible. Hyun's trained eye caught movement. A slight shimmer amid the wreckage. Something was alive in there. "We need to be careful," June warned, checking his radiation and biological contamination sensors. This could be a first contact scenario. The first glimpse of the survivor was almost accidental. A hand. No, not a human hand. Something else. Something with iridescent skin that seemed to change color with each movement, adapting to the surrounding environment like a living camouflage. As they cleared the final layer of twisted metal, they saw her. An alien woman, badly wounded, her body showing signs of extreme trauma. She was shivering, not just from cold, but from something deeper. Fear, desperation. Her eyes met theirs. In that moment, everything changed. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a refugee. And she had traveled impossibly far to reach this moment. Hyun and June exchanged a look. They both knew this was more than a simple rescue. This was the beginning of something much larger. First contact had just happened, and nothing would ever be the same again. The medical bay of the research station was a sterile environment of white walls and precise equipment. Arya Kim moved with careful, calculated steps, her hands hovering over the alien body that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The creature, the woman, lay motionless on a specially designed containment platform, her breathing shallow and irregular. Every sensor in the room was working overtime. Strange biomechanical readings danced across multiple screens, revealing a physiology completely alien to human understanding. Her skin was not just a surface, but a complex living system that shifted and changed, adapting to the controlled environment. June stood by the sealed entrance, his hand never far from the emergency containment controls. Years of security training had prepared him for many scenarios, but nothing like this. The aliens' arrival had turned their routine research mission into something entirely unexpected. "Her body temperature is dropping," Arya reported, her voice a mixture of scientific curiosity and genuine concern. "But not in a way we've ever seen before. It's like her entire biological system is negotiating with the environment." The aliens' wounds told a story of brutal conflict, deep lacerations that seemed to heal and then reopen, energy signatures that suggested weapons far beyond current human technology. Whatever had happened to her before crash landing on this frozen planet was a mystery waiting to be unraveled. Suddenly, a slight movement. Her hand, if it could be called a hand, twitched. The fingers were longer than human hands, with an additional joint and a membrane that seemed to change color with each microscopic movement. Her eyes opened. They were not like human eyes. They were larger, with multiple irises that seemed to rotate and focus independently. One moment deep blue, the next a shifting silver green. She looked around the room, processing information at a speed that made the medical equipment struggle to keep up. "Can you understand me?" Arya spoke softly, knowing that communication might be impossible. To everyone's surprise, the alien responded, not with words, but with a complex series of color changes and subtle body movements. The medical screens began to translate, slowly at first, then with increasing clarity. "Refuge," the translation came. "Pursuit. Danger." June tensed. "She's saying something about being chased. About danger." The alien's body began to generate heat, not from an external source, but from within. Her skin rippled with energy, creating a protective field that the medical sensors could barely comprehend. She was healing herself, using some form of biological technology that made human medical science look primitive. Arya carefully approached, maintaining a safe distance. "We're not going to harm you," she said, knowing that tone and body language might communicate more than words. More translations flickered across the screens. Fragments of a story emerged, a conflict, a civilization at war. Something about political refugees and a journey across impossible distances. The alien had a name, Nara. She had traveled further than any known species in recorded history. Her eyes locked with Arya's. In that moment, something passed between them. Not just understanding, but a kind of desperate hope. "Help," the translation came clearly. "They will find me." June's security protocols kicked in. "Who will find you? What are you running from?" The medical equipment began to show signs of strain. Nara's biological systems were so complex that they were literally rewriting the station's monitoring software. She was adapting, changing, surviving. Outside the medical bay, the frozen landscape of Kepler 452b continued its endless, silent watch. Winds howled across empty plains, carrying no hint of the extraordinary encounter happening within the research station's walls. Nara's hand moved, slowly, deliberately. She was trying to communicate something more. A warning? A plea? The translation systems worked frantically to decode her subtle movements. Coming. The screen flickered. Soon. The research station had just become the center of something much larger than a simple scientific mission. First contact was no longer a theoretical concept. It was happening. Right now, and nothing would be the same again. The quarantine room hummed with tension. Dr. Hyun Park watched carefully as Nara's translation device flickered between broken words and complex color patterns. Her body continued to change, adapting to the station's environment with each passing minute. My civilization values hierarchy more than life, Nara communicated, her skin shifting from deep blue to a pale silver. I am marked, removed, rejected. June leaned closer to the reinforced glass. Something in her tone suggested more than simple political exile. This was personal. This was survival. The translation continued. Fragments of a complex story emerged. Her people, the Nara civilization, operated under strict genetic and social codes. Any deviation meant immediate removal, complete isolation. Death was often a kinder option than the punishment they imposed. Nara had challenged something fundamental in her society, a system so rigid that individual thought was considered a threat. Her crime? Questioning the established order, suggesting that progress might require change. They will hunt me, she explained, her fingers creating intricate patterns that the computer struggled to interpret. Not just to punish, to eliminate completely. Hyun understood now. This wasn't just about political refuge. This was about absolute survival. The station's communication systems began picking up distant energy. Signatures. Something was searching, scanning. The pursuit hadn't ended with her crash landing. What can you offer? June asked directly. Every military instinct told him this was a potential security risk, but something in Nara's desperate communication suggested something more. Her response was immediate. Complex scientific formulas began streaming across the computer screens. Technological principles that made human understanding look primitive. Energy generation techniques, medical regeneration processes, communication technologies that could revolutionize human understanding of the universe. Everything, her translation, read. In exchange for protection. Arya Kim, who had been monitoring her medical readings, stepped forward. Her biological systems are unlike anything we've ever seen. Each moment she's healing, adapting, growing stronger. The negotiation was unlike any diplomatic encounter in human history. No formal protocols, no diplomatic language, just pure survival and potential mutual benefit. Outside, the first signs of approaching energy waves became visible. Something was coming. Something powerful enough to track a single refugee across light years. Hyun made a decision. A choice that would change everything. We accept, he said simply. Nara's multiple irises focused simultaneously. Relief, hope. Something close to tears, though not in any human sense, began to form. The station's defense systems activated, not as a military response, but as a protective mechanism. Something fundamental had shifted. Humanity had just made its first true interstellar alliance, not through military might, not through diplomatic channels, but through a simple act of compassion. Nara's body continued to pulse with information, technological secrets that could transform human understanding began downloading into the station's most secure systems. Each moment revealed something more incredible than the last. June watched the screens. Tracking systems showed multiple approach vectors. Something was coming. Something powerful. They're close, he warned. Nara's response was a complex series of color changes and energy pulses. A message, a promise, a commitment. Together, her translation read, "We survive." The first signs of pursuit appeared on the long-range scanners. Multiple ships, advanced technology, weapons beyond human comprehension. But something else was happening, something unexpected. Nara was no longer just a refugee. She had become something more, a bridge between civilizations, a hope for something greater. The negotiation was complete. The real challenge was just beginning. The research lab buzzed with an energy different from anything the station had ever experienced. Nara sat in the center of a complex web of holographic displays, her body releasing intricate patterns of light, and information that transformed human understanding with each passing moment. Dr. Hyun Park watched in silent amazement. The technological insights Nara shared were nothing short of revolutionary. Quantum communication principles that made current human technology look like primitive stone tools. Energy generation techniques that could solve global resource challenges. In minutes. Your current understanding is limited, Nara communicated, her skin displaying complex mathematical equations that seemed to dance and breathe. We can show you pathways of knowledge. Arya Kim worked frantically, capturing every piece of information. The medical implications alone were staggering. Regeneration techniques that could heal complex injuries in moments. Cellular communication methods that could potentially reverse aging. June monitored the security systems, aware that each moment of information exchange could be both their greatest opportunity and their most significant risk. The alien technology was so advanced, it threatened to rewrite everything humans understood. About science, medicine, and communication. A breakthrough came unexpectedly. Nara demonstrated a communication method that didn't rely on sound or traditional language. Pure information transfer through bioelectromagnetic waves. One moment of connection could communicate more than years of human conversation. Your species has potential, she explained. But you are like children learning to walk. We can show you how to run. The station's computer systems struggled to process the incoming information. Entire scientific databases were being rewritten. Theories that had taken centuries to develop were being completely dismantled and rebuilt in minutes. Energy production became the first major breakthrough. Nara showed them how to create sustainable power sources that could generate more energy, from a single cubic centimeter than entire human power plants. Clean, efficient, unlimited. Medical research took another massive leap. The regeneration techniques she shared could potentially cure diseases that had plagued humanity for generations. Cancer, genetic disorders, neurological conditions, all became potentially treatable. But it wasn't just about technology. Nara began sharing insights into her civilization's social structures, their understanding of universal communication, their philosophical approaches to existence. Survival is not about individual strength, she communicated. It's about collective adaptation. Hyun realized they were experiencing more than a technological exchange. This was a cultural transformation. The station's long-range scanners continued to track potential pursuit. But something had changed. The defensive posture was no longer just about protection. It was about preservation of something new, something important. June noticed how the entire team had changed. Their approach to research, their understanding of possibilities. Nara wasn't just sharing technology, she was teaching them how to think differently. Quantum communication principles began to unfold. Methods of transferring information that didn't just move through space, but seemed to exist in multiple places simultaneously. Concepts that made human understanding of physics look like childish drawings. We are connected, Nara explained. Everything is connected. Your species just hasn't learned to see it yet. The research continued day and night. No one wanted to sleep. Each moment brought new revelations, new possibilities. Arya discovered medical techniques that could potentially extend human life by centuries, repair mechanisms that could reverse cellular damage, healing processes that made current medical science look like primitive guesswork. Outside, the frozen landscape of Kepler 452b remained unchanged. But inside the research station, everything was transforming. Humanity was taking its first real steps into a larger universe, and Nara was their guide. The technological exchange was more than a moment of scientific discovery. It was the beginning of something much larger, a new understanding of what was possible, a new way of existing, a new hope. The sky above Kepler 452b turned dark. Not with night, but with approaching warships, massive structures that blocked out the distant sun, casting long shadows across the frozen research station. Nara's body began to pulse with warning signals. Her skin shifted through colors of intense communication, deep reds, warning blues, sharp metallic grays. "They have found me," she transmitted, her voice more a vibration than sound. Junli activated the station's defensive systems. But these were not standard military protocols. They were enhanced, transformed by the technological insights Nara had shared during their weeks together. Human technology, now something more. Dr. Hyun Park stood beside Arya Kim, watching the approaching alien fleet. Each ship represented a civilization so advanced it could crush their entire station in moments. But something had changed. They were no longer just passive observers. The first energy wave hit the station's perimeter, a blast that would have vaporized any standard human defensive system. Instead, it dissolved against a shimmering barrier, a shield created from Nara's shared technologies. "Adaptation is survival," Nara communicated, her multiple eyes focusing on different parts of the approaching threat simultaneously. June's modified defense systems began their counterattack, not with traditional weapons, but with complex quantum disruption fields. Each pulse of energy was a mathematical challenge, a technological puzzle designed to confuse and destabilize. The alien ships responded. Massive energy weapons that could split planets emerged. But human ingenuity, now enhanced by Nara's knowledge, created something unexpected. Instead of direct confrontation, they created complex computational barriers. Each weapon blast was redirected, transformed, turned back upon its source. The pursuing ships found themselves fighting against their own technology. Arya monitored the biological systems. Nara was more than just a passenger now. She was actively participating in the defense, her body generating complex energy patterns that interfered with the attacking ship's communication systems. "They believe in absolute control," Nara explained. "But control is an illusion. Adaptation is true strength. Battle was unlike any human conflict. No explosions, no traditional destruction. Instead, a complex dance of information, energy, and technological innovation. One by one, the alien ships began to malfunction. Their advanced systems turned against them by their own rigid programming. Humanity's greatest weapon was not firepower, but flexibility. The ability to think beyond established rules. Hyun watched in amazement as their small research station became the center of an interstellar confrontation. A refugee, a team of researchers and technology that rewrote the understanding of possibility. The last attacking ship began to break apart. Not destroyed, but systematically dismantled by its own internal systems. A defeat achieved through intelligence rather than violence. Silence returned quickly. The frozen landscape of Kepler 452b remained unchanged, as if nothing had happened. Nara's body began to stabilize. The threat was over. But something fundamental had changed. "You are no longer children," she communicated. Her multiple eyes showed something close to pride. "You are becoming." June checked the systems. Complete victory. No human casualties. No direct physical conflict. Just pure technological adaptation. Arya noticed something else. The technological exchange had changed them all. Not just their understanding of science, but their entire approach to existence. Hyun understood now. This was more than a rescue, more than a battle. This was an invitation, an introduction to a larger universe. As the last alien ship's remnants drifted away, Nara looked at her human companions. No words were needed. The communication was deeper, a shared understanding of survival, of potential, of hope. "Welcome," she communicated, "to something more." The research station continued its quiet vigil on the frozen planet, but everything had changed. Humanity had taken its first real step into a larger understanding, and nothing would ever be the same again.